It's the story no one saw coming. The moment when Belarus, once Russia's closest ally, seems to have turned its guns toward Moscow. Reports are exploding across international media claiming that President Alexander Lukashenko has authorized his military to prepare defensive actions against what he calls foreign interference, and shockingly, that includes movements coming from the Russian side. Is this the beginning of a total political rupture between Minsk and the Kremlin? Or is it a dangerous bluff in a high-stakes geopolitical game? This could be the most dramatic split yet inside Putin's shrinking circle of influence, and the consequences might reshape the entire region. For decades, Lukashenko has been seen as Moscow's loyal enforcer, a man who owed his power, security, and even survival to Vladimir Putin. Belarus hosted Russian troops, supplied weapons, and even allowed its territory to be used as a launch pad for the invasion of Ukraine. But now, everything seems to be changing. According to newly leaked intelligence from multiple European defense sources, Belarusian military units have repositioned several Russian-made missile systems, including Iskander short-range ballistic launchers, facing northeast toward Russia itself. While Minsk denies these reports, satellite imagery and insider leaks tell a very different story. Something is happening behind those tightly controlled borders. And here's where it gets even more unsettling. For months, there have been growing tensions between Lukashenko and Putin behind closed doors. Sources suggest that the Belarusian leader has grown increasingly frustrated with Moscow's dominance, economic pressure, and its treatment of Belarus as a mere satellite state. When Russia began pulling experienced officers and equipment out of Belarus to reinforce its war in Ukraine, Lukashenko saw it as a betrayal, a sign that the Kremlin was willing to weaken his defenses for its own war. The turning point reportedly came during a private meeting earlier this month. Kremlin insiders claim that Lukashenko refused to send additional Belarusian troops into Ukraine, arguing that Belarus will not die for Russia's mistakes. Days later, Belarusian security services began arresting officers accused of spying for Moscow. And now, with new troop movements and missile redeployments along the border, analysts believe Belarus may be signaling that it's no longer under Putin's command. But let's be clear, this isn't just about military maneuvers. This is about power, survival, and fear. Lukashenko knows what happens to leaders who fall out of favor with Putin. He's watched what happened in Prigozhin's failed rebellion. He's seen how quickly alliances crumble. And he understands one brutal truth. Once you're no longer useful to the Kremlin, you're disposable. So what is Lukashenko doing? Some experts say he's trying to send a message to Moscow. Belarus will not be the next pawn to fall. By turning his weapons, even symbolically, toward Russia, he's drawing a red line. Others believe this is a calculated move to gain leverage with the West, a signal to NATO that Belarus might be ready to shift away from Moscow's grip if offered guarantees of survival. Either way, it's a gamble that could ignite chaos. Inside Belarus, the mood is tense. Citizens are confused, soldiers are uncertain, and rumors are spreading like wildfire. State television continues to deny any conflict with Russia, but local independent media, what little remains of it, paints a different picture. Multiple Belarusian bases are reportedly on high alert, and command communications with Russian advisors have gone silent in several regions. Meanwhile, in Moscow, panic is brewing behind the scenes. The Kremlin is downplaying the reports but has quietly moved several units of its western military district closer to the Belarusian border. Putin cannot afford another rebellion. Not after the Wagner mutiny, not while the war in Ukraine is bleeding resources dry. A hostile Belarus would mean losing a vital buffer zone, cutting off supply routes, and opening up yet another unpredictable front. If this rift deepens, the consequences could be massive. For one, it could inspire other Kremlin-aligned states, especially those already growing uneasy, to start asserting independence. It would also leave Russia's western flank dangerously exposed to NATO. Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia are already tightening their border defenses and monitoring the situation closely. Any direct military clash between Russian and Belarusian forces would be an absolute nightmare scenario, politically, militarily, and economically. So how did it come to this? It's a combination of fatigue, desperation, and shifting loyalties. Lukashenko's regime has been under extreme strain since 2020, when massive protests erupted after a widely disputed election. To survive, he turned to Putin for help, and in doing so, chained Belarus's future to Moscow. But with Russia now isolated, sanctioned, and losing ground, those chains are starting to feel like a trap. Belarusian generals, especially younger officers, have grown wary of Moscow's influence. They've seen how Russian commanders treat Belarusian forces as expendable. They've seen how Moscow's promises of security have turned into economic dependency and international isolation, and many of them are asking the same question. What if Belarus is next? By turning his army, or even pretending to, is against Russia, Lukashenko might be trying to preempt an internal coup, show strength before his own ranks turn against him, create a new narrative. I am defending Belarus from all threats, even from the east. It's a dangerous strategy, but it's also his only one left. The irony? Just a few years ago, this same man mocked Western democracies and swore eternal loyalty to Putin. Now, those very alliances could be the only thing keeping him alive. And what about Russia? If these reports prove true, Moscow faces one of the most serious fractures in its post-Soviet sphere of influence since the fall of the USSR. A rebellion in Belarus would not only shake Putin's control, it would also send shockwaves across every allied state still under Russia's umbrella. Kazakhstan, Armenia, even Central Asia would see it as a sign that the once mighty Kremlin can no longer keep its friends in line. But for now, both sides are locked in a high-stakes standoff, too afraid to move first, too proud to back down. Lukashenko continues to insist Belarus is ready to defend its sovereignty from any direction. Putin, meanwhile, has ordered an emergency assessment of border readiness and called Lukashenko for what? Russian media described as a tense but professional conversation. No, one knows what was said behind those closed doors. But everyone knows what's at stake. If a single missile is launched, by mistake or by design, it could trigger the kind of spiral neither country can control. It would fracture alliances, rattle global markets, and potentially ignite a confrontation that draws in the entire region. At this point, one thing is certain: the trust between Minsk and Moscow has been broken. Whether this ends with a quiet realignment or an open conflict depends on what happens in the next few days. The world is watching closely, because if Belarus truly turns its back on Russia, it won't just be the end of an alliance. It will mark the beginning of a new, unpredictable chapter in the struggle for power in Eastern Europe. This could redefine everything we thought we knew about post-Soviet loyalty, about power, and about survival in a world where yesterday's friend can become tomorrow's threat. If you found this breakdown informative, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for daily updates on global conflicts, and share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Lukashenko is serious? Or is this just another dangerous political bluff? Either way, one thing's for sure. The game between Minsk and Moscow has entered its most dangerous phase yet. Stay tuned, because this story is far from over.